Hi everybody, this is Danai, and in today's video we will be talking about the third movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. This is a very requested video. Throughout the past months I've been getting multiple comments on this specific movement, on the Moonlight Sonata in general, but especially on the third movement. Obviously the Moonlight Sonata is a very famous piece by Beethoven, but everyone knows the first movement, which technically is fairly simple. However, the third movement is actually quite complicated. So today I will be getting into the different moments of the third movement that are challenging, and I'll be mentioning things to look out for. I won't be going into depth for every single moment of the entire movement because that would be an hour-long video or a 2-hour-long video, but I'll touch on what I find are the most challenging moments and just share my tips so that you get an overview of how I would practice the third movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. So if you're interested in that, then keep on watching. So obviously we're starting off with the famous arpeggios going upwards, and this is already the first moment that I want to mention a little bit. Of course, I practice this slowly and with different exercises. One thing that is important to keep in mind here is that the tempo is extremely fast. So the way you usually practice your arpeggios in your warm-up will most likely be slower than the tempo that is required here. So it is a bit of a different technique that you need to apply when playing the arpeggios in this movement. When practicing arpeggios slowly, I always emphasize that it helps to do this movement where the wrist starts low and goes high as the arpeggio progresses, just to make sure that everything is relaxed and to make sure that your fingers are in place. However, at the speed that this piece requires, you don't have time to do this movement at all, and it really is a fingers only approach. So although I do practice it slowly with this movement, when I play through it in the tempo, I keep my wrist completely still and try to really do the minimal required movement. That I really like to use here is 1 long note and 3 short notes. So in the group of 4/16ths that I have, I play 1 note short and then the other one's extremely fast, and then I stop on the next long note of the next group. Now, the important thing is to not just always use the same note. So you can practice the first note long, then second, third, and fourth fast. But then in the next run through, practice the second note long and then third, fourth, and first note fast. Then in the next run through, practice the third note long, and then finally in the last run through, practice the fourth note long. This way, everything will be distributed evenly between the fingers, because it is extremely important in this piece that all fingers are equally as strong, equally as active, equally as loud. You don't want any weird accents sticking out. So this is why I find this exercise very helpful for this piece specifically. So you'll notice that when I practice this exercise, I try to not prepare my fingers while I hold the long note, but I try to really just be very still while holding the note, just completely relaxed, and then in a matter of a split second, very quickly prepare the next finger just before I play it. And the reason behind that is when you actually play it in tempo, that's all the time you have. So it doesn't really help you to take a long time to prepare it, but it helps to simulate that situation of the fast tempo that you will need to be able to play when playing through. Another exercise that I like to do is I like to always repeat the following note twice. So I hold the previous note, I repeat the following note twice, then I hold that note and repeat the following note twice, then I hold that note and repeat the following note twice, and so on. Another thing that's very important in this passage is the left hand. The left hand, in my opinion, really is what holds you, and it kind of is the substitute for a conductor. I like to see my left hand as the conductor because it really holds the beat. It doesn't have as high a technical challenge as the right hand, so it's a bit easier to keep that as your hand that keeps you steady. So I really focus on the left hand when playing through. And I really make sure that my left hand is extremely rhythmical and extremely exact when it comes to keeping the pulse going. So of course I will practice that hand separately, and also I will really make sure to feel those quarter notes in the beat. Now, when putting both hands together in that opening passage, as I said, I focus my thoughts on the left hand. I really make sure that my right hand follows my left hand and not vice versa. And then, just to speak again about the technique in the right hand, I try to keep my wrist as calm and as still as possible and just let my fingers do the movement. Because the tempo is so fast, there is no time for anything else anyway. When you have those sforzatos at the end of each arpeggio phrase going upwards, use that as a type of release, because you have all that build up, and then when you have the sforzato, I kind of just flick my wrist forward and use that as a release before I start with the next arpeggio phrase going upwards. One final thing about this passage is when you have the arpeggios that are connected through repetitions, I isolate that repetition moment because it is a bit of an added difficulty, and I practice the repetition only, then I add one note before and one note after, then another note before and another note after, and then finally I play the two arpeggios one after another. Now, I just quickly want to touch on the phrase that follows that opening, which is one where there is much more of a legato feeling. Up to now, we had the left hand playing a staccato. Everything was pretty non-legato, pretty agitated. And now we're coming into a different feeling, a different type of sound, and a different type of articulation. And this is not as hard, I find, as the beginning, but I just want to mention that the left hand should be very legato and that it helps to kind of think more horizontal in that following passage. So just generally a more horizontal, more legato feeling, as opposed to the beginning where it is much more vertical, where you're feeling those beats in a vertical manner, and then those sforzato chords, of course, also give a very vertical feeling. Also, the right hand is playing this repeated G sharp, which is always on the offbeat. So that, of course, should be as soft as possible. You don't want to be hearing this G sharp all the time, but you want to be hearing the melody. So that G sharp should be as light as possible, and then hear the legato melody underneath. The next point that I just want to briefly touch on is around bar 30. This is also something that was mentioned in one of my comments and in one of the previous videos. It's the moment when there is a trill on top of the octave. So basically we have an octave that is a quarter note and then an octave that is a half bar long, and the quarter note octave has a trill on top of it. So in essence, this means that we have to press the octave and then the upper voice has to trill while we hold the thumb. So a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, it's important to find the right fingering. For me, the first fingering that I use for the first octave, which is the A sharp, I actually use 1-3 for the octave, and then I trill using 3-5 as my fingering for the trill, because 3-5 for me feels stronger than 4-5. And then for the second situation where you're trilling on what sounds like a G and then going to the G sharp, I actually use 4-5. So I play the octave with 1-4 and then trill using my fourth and fifth finger. Now this is very different depending on how big your hand is, depending on your hand structure. I know that for some people to play an octave with 1-3 feels very uncomfortable. So then in that case, I would recommend that you play it with 1-4 and trill with 4-5 in both situations. For me, it really helps to trill with 3-5 because it just feels stronger, and my third finger is stronger than my fourth finger, like with most people. So it really helps for me when I am able to use the third finger. Now, one little trick, quote unquote, that you can do is to not hold the lower voice for the entire duration you're supposed to hold it. Of course, in theory, you are supposed to hold the octave and hold that lower voice with the thumb while you trill. However, if it is extremely uncomfortable, if it puts a strain on your hand, if you feel pain, if you don't know how to solve this moment, then I would suggest that you just press the octave and then let go of the thumb and just focus on the trill. And with your hand, actually, after having played the octave, go out of that octave position. So really collect those fingers and play the trill as if it were a single voice trill. This can be very helpful and can really relax your hand from the octave situation. Of course, if you have a big hand and if you feel comfortable trilling with that octave underneath, then by all means do that. That's exactly how it is written. I'm just saying that this can be a nice little trick for someone that feels a lot of strain when trying to trill while pressing the octave, and it doesn't make that much of a difference for the piece. If you once press the octave and then let it go, it will sound very beautiful as well. Another little mental trick that I want to mention about these trills is that it helps to think of the beginning of a trill like the beginning of a crescendo. So I don't think an accent, but kind of the opposite, like a hairpin going like this, like the beginning of a crescendo, and then towards that half bar long octave, it leads there, and that's where it gets louder. It kind of gives you the chance to start softly and not have to start with this brilliant accent and then just trill, but kind of start the trill carefully. The next passage that I want to touch on in this movement is a passage where the right hand is playing scales. It comes both times. The first time it is an A major scale, and the left hand is playing chords, but the rhythm of the chords changes. So first it's just in quarter note rhythm, then it's in eighth note rhythm, but it's always on the offbeat. And there I just find it important to avoid any unwanted accents and also to stay extremely in time. What is important here is to keep that inner conductor going once again. Just that here you don't have the left hand to support you with that. It has to be within you 100% because your left hand is also only playing partial notes of the beat. So make sure that you really feel that pulse. The biggest danger is that you will rush, that you will just start speeding up, because it is one of those passages where it is very likely to start rushing. So make sure that you really feel that pulse and that those offbeats are still light, because in classical music, especially in this sonata, there's a difference between how we play heavy beats and light beats. I don't want to say that the heavy beats have an accent, but they have a bit of an emphasis, I would say. And then the light beats are very soft and very light. And when the left hand comes in and plays those chords on the light beats, what you want to avoid is to have accents there. So make sure that although that's where the chords are, it is very light, and within you, you actually are feeling the heavy beats, which are on the pause. There is no note, but you actually feel the pause as the heavy beat, and then the left hand is just playing the offbeats lightly. And then on top of that, your right hand is just playing the scales without rushing, very evenly. And then finally, I just want to touch on the final passage where you finally have both hands playing those arpeggios. And basically, it is exactly the same that I've been talking about for the opening passage in the right hand, the same exercises, the same things to look out for, just now for both hands. So I would suggest that for the left hand, you also practice that exercise with one long note and then 3 short notes to make sure that you really get all the fingers evenly prepared and very independent from each other. Also repeating the following note twice. So I do all those exercises before I put both hands together. And then also it's the final passage of the entire sonata. So I like to really play it as virtuoso as possible, very explosive and very brilliant, just with a lot of energy going towards that lowest note of the arpeggios and with big explosive final chords. So these were my general thoughts on the final movement, the third movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have played this piece before or if you are learning it, and if yes, I will be very curious to hear your thoughts and also your practice methods for this movement specifically. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like and subscribe to my channel. That would help me a lot. And I will see you again in the next video next week. Bye.